Hi, everyone. We have two terrific poets with us today, James Cushing and David A. Romero. David will read first, and then Jim. David A. Romero is a Mexican-American spoken word artist from Diamond Bar, California. He is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of El Martillo Press. Romero is the author of My Name is Romero, Flower Song Press 2020, and Diamond Bars 2, Moontide Press 2024. Romero has received honorariums from nearly 100 colleges and universities in 34 different states in the USA, and has also performed live in Mexico, Italy, and France. Romero's work has been published in literary magazines in the United States, Mexico, England, Scotland, Canada, and Hungary. Romero has opened for Latin Grammy-winning bands Ozomatli and La Santa Cecilia. Romero's work has been published in anthologies alongside poets laureate Joy Harjo, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Louis J. Rodriguez, Jack Hirschman, and Tongo Ison Martin. Romero has won the Uptown Slam at the historic Green Mill in Chicago, the birthplace of slam poetry. Here's an exciting, wonderful, vibrant poet, David A. Romero.
Hey, Harry. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate being on with you. Yes, absolute pleasure. I just recently released, as Harry mentioned, my latest collection of poetry, Diamond Bars 2, published by Moontide Press. And it really was an honor to be chosen by publisher Eric Morago and to have marketing specialist Ellen Weber there with Moontide Press believe in this work and champion it. So I'm going to go ahead and perform the signature poem from this collection, which is Basketball with Edgar Allan Poe. And it starts like this. Dusk falls upon the court. Airplanes loom overhead, shooting hoops in loneliness when all of a sudden a strange thought drifts. Bump, bump goes the basketball, rapping upon the asphalt. What if this evening I played basketball with Edgar Allan Poe? The poet appears suddenly upon the court, dark and heavy layered raven's cloth, hardly the proper garb of a basketball player, methinks. Still, he motions for the ball, and I pass it to him. He drives the lane towards the basket, and in desperation, I move to block him. Edgar Allan Poe and I are playing a game now. Sweat and grit, anger and determination, win or lose, no draw. Bragging rights for eternity, and I've got all the advantage that being alive and a few good layups can allow. But Poe posts up, Pump fakes his shots. In his wake, the backboard is transformed into a swinging pendulum, reminding me that I have been playing in this pit of imagination, mundane reality long before I ever played against him. Edgar Allan Poe is going to win. His every shot takes the air out of me, inexplicably burying me alive. My smack talk is grave. You are dead, poet. I am immortal. Poe shoots the basketball. You're just a zombie, I cry. I am immortal. Poe shoots the basketball. You are an emotionally disturbed, nutjob weakling who should have been prescribed Vicodin, amongst other things. We put people like you in loony bins. You couldn't handle your drugs, your family, your alcohol, You need a probation officer and a therapist. Consumption took your incestuous wife from you, and you watched helplessly, knowing there was nothing you could do to stop it. Poe, never flitting, still is shooting. Pain and the terror of loss constitute my soul, poet. What are the contents of yours? He shoots, he scores, forevermore Edgar Allan Poe retires from the floor. At dawn, I rise to face his shadow, to be a writer, to be a poet who at long last peruse those volumes of forgotten lore. Ladies and gentlemen, Edgar Allan Poe is immortal. That's why one night I let him beat me at basketball. Thank you. All right. So so that's a fun one. So this collection, Diamond Bars 2, along with the allusions to the works of greats such as Edgar Allan Poe and Emily Dickinson in here, it's really a collection of nostalgia, of the memories I had of my hometown of Diamond Bar, which is situated between the 57 and the 60 by Pomona, Brea. People sometimes say Orange County, tip of LA County. Sometimes people say Inland Empire. Not really, but yeah, it's this kind of place that's on the border of all these different other things that are known better. But anyways, so I want to go ahead and read. This poem is much more like a story, and I came up with this idea, I believe, in high school. It's kind of based upon memories of a movie theater, the Krikorian, which was our local movie theater that we had in Diamond Bar. And it's a coming of age story. Here we go. Summer at the movies. You should have seen this place when it was new. The glass on the admissions booth was spotless. The doors covered with posters, stickers, and cutouts for new releases. And when you opened those doors, a wave of fresh popcorn greeted your nostrils. Turn left. There's concessions. Turn right. The arcade alley. When they brought in games, each was an event. The talk of the town. The type of thing to make you wish you could conjure another quarter from your pocket. And beyond, the tea section that led to where the magic really happened. The ticket counter with the girl my older brother had a crush on, bright-eyed and brace-faced Jackie, ponytailed in immaculate uniform with bright copper name badge, ushered you in with a warm greeting. That was when the floors were clean, when all the seats folded up properly, before the upholstery was covered in gum and torn, before much bigger theaters opened just miles away, before businesses in that same shopping center shut down. There was definitely something in the air that summer. But all the better for us, the moviegoers. Between middle and high school, adolescence and adulthood, Tara and Ignacio were my best friends, had been since the theater was brand new. This was the perfect place for us, close enough to walk or ride our bikes to. Some days, Tara would come over after practices at one dance studio. The theater was a place we could stop in for a game or two or spend entire afternoons in, watching those images flicker across the screen to the steady hum of the projector. We'd buy a ticket or sometimes just candy or drink, sneak past the now empty ticket counter, head into the next one. We watched whole movies, sometimes just pieces, ones we knew the dialogue to and new releases. Sometimes Tara would stand up on a chair, half her body lit by the image, her shadow cast upon the screen. She'd shout, reenact a scene from the movie. Nacho was the ringleader, the one who showed us how to move from theater to theater. He'd learned how to do it from his older sister, who'd stopped going to the theater a long time ago. That summer of mundane magic, of the sticky spots on the floor that made our shoes squeak, that greeted us like old friends. That summer we would leave in evenings that were still warm. At first, twilight more of a suspicion than a reality. And months later, it's getting dark out, still meant it was time to head home. We each had nights that summer, Tara's dad, Ignacio's mother, my dog Ginger, when we didn't want to leave the theater, urged the others to stay, to watch another one. The air was still ripe then. Sometimes fights, someone pulling a knife, high schoolers having sex, 40s and weed played in our theater as coming attractions. One day we arrived, and the doors were closed. A notice posted on the glass, framed in clear tape, changing ownership. The admissions booth and theater were dark. The projectors inside, still and silent. Nacho was the first to leave. His father had a new job in a county or two over. Tara and I had moments. We held hands, even kissed a couple of times, but really had different interests, found different cliques. You wouldn't have known what we had once meant to one another if you had seen us walk by each other in the hallways of high school. That winter, when they finally opened the doors to the theater just to clear everything out, I heard from one person that when they went inside and shone their flashlight on one of the walls, there was a silhouette behind where one of the movie screens used to be. They said it was a perfect black silhouette of a girl in a dancer's pose. Just a little reminder of that summer at the movies before the Krikorian shut down. Thank you. Thank you. So that summer at the movies, yes. And I guess Kevin Smith, now this is in the year of our Lord, 2024. He has a movie called the 430 movie. It looks, I haven't seen the trailer yet, but I think it's probably something kind of like what I just read. But I swear to you, I have evidence. I have a Paige from high school where I came up with that idea. Yes, let me go ahead. I'm going to read you something. It's fun to have this opportunity to read some things that otherwise I might not. This poem is called "Suburban Problems," and this is actually more of a true story. The character here, his name has been changed, but this is a real person. This is a real story with me, whereas the other one was actually largely fictional. Okay. This poem is called Suburban Problems. Shopping malls across America were covered in rock. Lawn slabs cut into decorative panels, glued onto the faces of buildings to give them color and texture. Frank Lloyd Wright believed that in design, it was vital to incorporate elements from the local environment to make buildings appear as if they were just another part of the land's features. Some of those new buildings were beautiful. Those rock slabs really did accomplish their stated goal of bringing more character to those chain restaurants and big box retailers. But in the years between 2001 and 2006, my best friend Neil didn't see decorative faces. He saw scalable ones. He didn't see walls. He saw handholds, toe jams, crags, and footholds, walls tall enough to give you a thrill, but not enough to take your life, enough to break a leg or to roll an ankle, but not enough to leave you paralyzed from bouldering. The climbing of boulders, Neil called it buildering, the climbing of buildings. In rock climbing, the pre-charted set of moves one can use to ascend a face is called a route. Each route has a scale of difficulty. Routes are also called problems. And problems started springing up all over suburbia. We drove in Neil's musty red Jeep with climbing shoes, chalk bags, and a green foam crash fold-up pad looking for them. One of our favorites was in Brea, an auto repair shop. We only ever climbed it at night, most of the time sober. But when Neil was drunk, no matter where we were, he would immediately take off, start climbing the first thing he could see. He was reckless and fearless. Some people thought he was weird, wanted to avoid him. But to some of us, he was a legend. Scale the face, climb the mountain, even if it's in your own backyard. Rock slabs with chalk marks already there. It was catching on. I started referring to it as a movement, the beginning of a suburban renaissance, like bombing trains, tagging walls, grinding in empty pools. Businesses caught on. The faces were polished smooth, smoother than the hardest routes on El Cap, and any remaining chalk marks were washed off, wiped clean, like the problems had never been there. All right, that's there we go. Suburban problem. So I'm going to read a real short one as I come to the end of my set here. Yes. Oh, yes. So this poem is called I Like to Be. And it's about how miserable I am often. Even as a professional spoken word artist, having the pleasure of traveling across the country. All right, here we go. Because of regrets and fear of selling out and compromising my principles. All right, here we go. I'd like to be driftwood, wrangled, scarred, and polished under a thunderhead sky, past the reach of settled land, where the grass grows thin and the pines lean sparse. I'd like to be cocktail napkins, podiums and people gathered, glossy trifold brochures folded with a name and picture, your speaker, better yet, invisible, your sponsor and donor. I'd like to be a megaphone filled with grime and righteousness, a used and tattered army jacket that's seen its share of arrests, that has felt the cold floor of jail cells for only the right reasons. A life miserable, but with few compromises. All right. And I do have, I guess, one last time for one last one because it's really, really short. This is the second to last poem in the collection. This poem is called Familiar Ghosts. All right, here we are. Familiar Ghosts. The Diamond Bar Ranch is long gone, but cattle still graze on Dawn's meadow. In Chino Hills they roam. Fireworks dash upwards, illuminating Bucky's face on a 4th of July night at Paul's Sea Grove. When I leave Diamond Bar, I want to go back there because other places are full of only lonely roads and unfamiliar ghosts. Some say this town is dead, but it's here where I get to keep close. Thank you very much. That concludes my set. Honor to be here with you all, and I really work.
Well, thank you, David, for such a fabulous musical, rhythmic, real storytelling, for such a fabulous rhythmical, musical journey. You know, one of your themes obviously is place. One is love of where you grew up, and also you mentioned nostalgia. You know, Ella Jake, and for a young man, you have such a sense of that, and maybe a lot of our world is, and a lot of our poems are Ella Jake in our time. But you know, you're such a sharp observer, and there's so much humanity in your feeling for your fellow beings, and for where you grew up. You know, your love of movies, obviously, I love that. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself? I'd like to ask you a few questions. When did you write your first poem?
Oh boy, my first poem. Wow. It was probably a grade school poem. I really can't remember, but I remember my first poem, really with the intention, or actually I remember the first poem that I ever really drew any kind of acclaim for was this very angsty poem about being lonely and walking through the hallways of my high school. And that was published in a literary journal. And it was such an effective poem that I actually secured the attention of one of the loves of my life, through this poem, because she loved it so much and related to it so strongly that she memorized it. Before that, another great poem was a poem that I wrote to a math tutor. It was called "To My Math Girl," which was just really humorous, silly poem. But those were some of the first ones that I remember that really had any kind of traction to them. Uh,
Well, who were some of the poets who influenced you before you started writing in a regular, serious way?
Oh, so yes, poets. So yes, I of course, like just about everyone my age, I was inspired by Dr. Seuss, Shel Silverstein. But in fourth grade, I really took off with Edgar Allan Poe, of course. So that's has remained a figure that imposing influence on my life and my ambitions and how I approach poetry. Um, so yes, definitely him there. And then as an adult, Saul Williams was a poet that I became aware of, a spoken word artist with a very rhythmic style and very influenced by politics and hip hop and very very different, but also a student of the theater and of classical poetry and so I think it kind of brought in and there's a darkness too. So but yeah, I think this book too especially would be influenced by when I was young, I used to read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes. So you had Bill Watterson, and other comics like that. Charles Schultz. There's kind of like a character of that to my work of kind of the everyday kind of feel of place and of people and interactions between friends. I think that's very very much influenced by their kind of work and kind of this idea of that the mind is always venturing towards art and poetry, but is always brought down by something very mundane. Often, uh, this philosophizing, but reined in by the fact that we're about to careen in a wagon over a cliff and we're going to hit it into water and rocks, kind of situation.
Well, you ran it down on the court with Edgar Allan Poe, and Poe influenced the symbolist poets, who the symbolist poets influenced T.S. Eliot among others, and Eugene O'Neill. So that's a great path. We have a few more minutes. Could you just tell us a little bit about your journey as a spoken word artist? Many poets, they study the poetry, they write it, they get it published in magazines, and it's on the page. And yours is, out there, very theatrical and very rhythmical. And just tell us a little bit about when you began doing that and where it took you. I think it would be very informative for our audience and for me too.
Oh yeah, thanks. So yeah, I think that I had very much wanted to be a very serious writer, growing up, and my mind was directed towards writing prose or towards writing screenplays, towards writing, getting into film. But it was the immediacy and the transformative power of performance poetry, particularly spoken word, which really drew me into poetry as a lifelong passion and now as a career and as a lifetime pursuit. Um, so I say with the immediacy of spoken word, particularly in performance poetry in general, is that as a writer, there's really nothing more gratifying than sharing your work and having it be received by audiences. So and while that certainly is possible as primarily as a page poet, in performance poetry, we get to experience that live, and we know that in many ways we are very much responsible for how can we get someone to respond to our work? Well, we drive or take the bus or walk or whatever to the nearest open mic or the nearest workshop. And so I saw with that by by trying to find as many ongoing open mic series that I could and reading opportunities that I would get the chance, and in the same process, hear more voices and eventually through this work, I met the type of people that would book featured readings and then would book performances at colleges. And so I started to develop my craft by watching, others and by learning, try to kind of experimenting, doing a mishmash of, and this is what I always recommend to people. I always recommend, study all of your different influences. And if you have influences that are very different from one another, comedy, high art, low art, serious writing, this kind of writing, see if it's not possible to create some kind of fusion from all of this, and bring things from one art form to another, and create your own synthesis. And this synthesis will be the thing that you then will become known for. So that's very, very important. And yeah, I was very lucky to have people like Corey Kofer, Best Kept, who was an HBO deaf poet, the host of an open mic series that ran for over 20 years in Pomona. A Mic and Dim Lights took an interest in me. Supported my work, started booking me for colleges. I met Matt Cedillo. We started, that's one of the best things you can do, is to find someone, find a friend who gets your work, who's there to support you and really is in your corner. And once you start doing things, start building a resume. Try finding as many ways as you can to package what you've done. Record your performances. Make sure your performances are recorded so that you can share them. That's a great way to share them with any audiences that aren't immediately there. And performance and reading always draws attention back to the page, so that gives people another way of accessing your work.
We have about
So, yeah.
We have 1 minute left before Jim comes on the show, and two things, if you could, within a minute. What is the largest audience you ever played before? And also, do you do any other work outside of just being a spoken word artist?
So yeah, the first one, very important. Okay, well, yeah, I've performed in a crowd over 1,000, so not multiple thousand, but over 1,000. But in all honesty, they weren't mostly there to see me; they were mostly there to eat. It was an outdoor festival. I was on a big stage, great Dia de los Muertos event. Second, yes, I am the editor-in-chief of El Martillo Press. We've been running for 2 years now. You can find out more about us on Instagram at El Martillo Press, and our website is elmartillopress.com. We've published 14 authors in under 2 years. So yes, we're very, very proud of that. We've published an anthology, just came out with our first anthology, and one of our first titles won the American Book Award.
Well, I'm thankful that you published me, and From Venice to Venice, Venice, California to Venice, Italy. That's a fabulous anthology. So thank you. This has really been a luminous reading, and you let us into your world, and your writing and your performing are just superb and superlative. So thank you once again, David A. Romero.
Thank you, Harry.
James Cushing, born 1953 in Palo Alto, California, holds a doctorate in English from UC Irvine. In the early 1980s, he hosted a live poetry radio program on KPFK FM in Los Angeles, which gave early exposure to Dennis Cooper, David Trinidad, Amy Gersler, Wanda Coleman, Leland Hickman, Scott Wanberg, and many others. From 1989 through 2020, when he retired, he taught literature and creative writing at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and served as the community's poet laureate for 2008 to 2010. Cushing's poems have appeared in many journals, and his 30-year association with Cahuenga Press has resulted in 7 full-length collections of poetry, the most recent of which is Tangled Hologram. His daughter is the New York-based poet Iris Cushing. Here's an original, brilliant, astonishing poet, James Cushing.
Thank you so much, Harry. Thank you, David, for sharing your original and powerfully dramatic work with us. Thank you, Allegra. Thank you to the Creative Chaos team. I dedicate this poem to the shadow through whose grace we live, whose clothing hangs drained of meaning over my mirror. I cannot see my face reflected in its center, but I think I see you, dear reader, whoever you may be. I want to call you and tell you so you'll laugh me out of it, but I haven't found how to fit that fear into my poem. Suppose I try fitting it into a play as a piece of dialogue spoken to a live audience. I imagine my stand-in posing, fascinated by something. It's his reflection in the prop department's full-length mirror. A shirt hangs on it. He soliloquizes. You may not be whom you claim to be. No single voice deserves a place at center of so much light and heat. Or may there exist no center outside the mind? Is that why the novel succeeded in the 18th century? By allowing us to think we're the featured attraction of wherever we happen to live. We wanted the world to act like a mirror. Is that why we had this hard of a time living in it? He turns toward a woman, shadowed until now. It seems they once were lovers. A lime spotlight centers on her hands. She holds an apple and a hand mirror. Now I begin to see it. This is her story, not my stand-ins. She thought it, felt it, lived it, and wrote it. Her interior being as such was the motor, not the vehicle. This could be my most significant discovery, assuming I can fit it into my poem. This could reshape the way I live, unbraid my tangled skeins to reveal another center, another radical life idea to unify the book-length essay of my life thus far, which presents only a dirty mirror image of nothing but the stuff I remember. A mere selection of freak episodes, impressions of feelings, maybe not much more. A fit subject for a subtle satire of early 21st century midlife? No, that's not it. Look around you. There's no vital center everyone believes in enough to stand up and while life makes circles around us. We don't live in a mirror. We mustn't center being in a place like that, then deny it. We have only the poem. That was a piece from my collection, Pinocchio's Revolution, from Cahuenga Press. It's in the sestina form. It's called Even the Highest, Thickest Walls. And I wanted to start with that because I thought it brought something to bear about the spirit of poetry. I'm going to continue with poems from another Cahuenga Press book of mine, one called Solace. These are some poems about my mother and my father. Mother first. A bright yellow nap. My mother slept with the man who knew the names of each little cloud of smoke puffing from underneath her bedroom door. And he counted her coins at the end of her day. The sky was so abraded that when I found strands of it in my bed just after waking, I could never tell what it was. The summer had been evicted. Moon-illuminated pedestrians gathered to talk about their sons and their sons' hypnotists. So who is to be thanked for the way we all turned out? My hands are other people, and my legs and feet are animals, mating as they walk. A year has passed since fissures first showed. They're deeper, wider, bluer. Something adjusts the speed of the shuffle. We're low on milk, snacks, everything but fallen leaves. I find my clothes and wallet. My floor disobeys when I tell it, stay beneath me. Lately, an older man wearing glasses and a robe peers out from behind a tropic print curtain, waiting for the chance to explain the meaning and the spelling of his name. He has 3 secrets he must split like logs, each with ideas that curve down behind them and back, each one leaving a sparkling green trail. And then he shades off into something relaxed and humane. The body of a fish. Mother, may I touch your secret hand again and tell you what I have been learning since you died. The heart of a child beats here, in the chest of a full-grown man. There is no remedy for love. No food, no drink, no drug or potion can cure this sick heart's heaviness. The jealous heart rejects all formulas as truth stands before us. A store window full of expensive goods we must carry. You cannot re-give me life that I may mar it again. All your promises have become white fuzz, crackling in the bonfire of dreams. And those dreams, I cannot understand them. Their delights annoy me. Their hopes sadden my heart. The night leaves burn marks on my bed. I wish I had the body of a fish instead of this 10-cent puddle of tears. And now, Father, this poem is in the form of a pantoum, somewhat of a loose pantoum, but a pantoum nonetheless. Sleepaway Camp. Father published a ghost story that chirped in our pear tree every summer, all summer, especially as dawn reached our bedroom windows and we were most ourselves, whatever we were called. Chirping in our pear tree every summer, all summer, the story sang of Edgar Allan Poe, August Derleth, Shirley Jackson. We were most ourselves, whatever we called each other or our story, which were almost the same thing. Our story referenced Homer's Nequia and Mary Shelley's monster. We couldn't help that we were raised as readers of each other or our story, which were almost the same thing as the earth, with its tree and the summer-long chirping. We couldn't help with that. We were raised as readers, and our childhood was a sky of authors, titles, and the earth with its tree. The summer-long chirping, a scarf for the wind, echoed as far as the river, and our childhood was a sky. Full of authors and titles as a big city library, we judged ourselves as misty and girlish. A scarf made of wind echoed as far as the river, leaving me starstruck, leaving you skeptical and sore. At a big city library, we judged ourselves as misty and girlish, but we found that sleepy, flawed judgment had left me starstruck, had left you skeptical and sore. When you found your true home, you went right to sleep. You found sleep's flawed judgment, its way of ending and beginning again, the alchemy of its storm. You found your true home and went right to sleep with only stars to watch you and the marvelous river, ending and beginning again like the alchemy of a storm, especially as dawn reached our bedroom windows. With only those stars to watch him and the marvelous river, Father published that ghost story. Some of you may notice the printing on the bottom of this cup, or the framed picture behind my head. 1964 was 60 years ago, and that was the year that the Beatles made their big splash in the popular culture. So, to celebrate the anniversary of that, I'd like to read you a poem called "The 12 Original Beatles Albums." And the idea behind the poem is that each one of the Beatles albums is speaking in the first person. The 12 original Beatles albums. Please, please me. I am the one who asks you to ask me why. I am 14 years old. 6 of those years were written by others. I am never tired of pleasing you, although I am getting ready to tell you my secret. I am born the day Sylvia Plath dies. With the Beatles. I am christened the day John Kennedy dies. I am in all seasons only halfway visible. I am just about to change the way you see yourself. I am sending something very close and hot to you. I am sitting alone like you in a bedroom. A hard day's night. I am part of a large, well-loved black and white picture made of many tiny black and white pictures. I am leaping, running, jumping, but always pursued. I am 13 years old and all those years are mine. I am the only one in my class. Beatles for sale. I am, as my face shows, winning this big, fast game. But I am, and have always been, a loser in the small, deep game. I am pledged to make no reply to that question. I was worried when my darling began wearing black. I am still worried, so I look back into my German past. Help. I am now so worried I make my worry a comedy. I am hiding my mother's body under a pair of flutes. I am holding someone's ticket, someone who does not care what I am about to lose. And that ticket admits one person. I am one of over 60,000, but I am still alone. Rubber Soul. I am not cute anymore, according to my new friend. I am standing in one of my gardens, and I swear I am not looking at what I ever saw before. I am making no plans in the normal sense. I am so moved by beauty that I start speaking French. Revolver. I am going to the graveyard with a notebook and a melody. I am switching my left and right hands for the sake of satire. I am dressed in frightening black and white, but I am still the most colorful day in August, and I am ending an important part of your life. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I am changing my name and surrounding myself with ghosts. I am the result of an unexpectedly boring process. I am a sketch for a picture that no one ever painted. I am, nevertheless, everybody's favorite. I am never goosing you any other way. Magical Mystery Tour. I am an accident that turned out better than well. I am American for the first and last time. I am a bus chartered by a fool and a blue jay. I am flying on my lifted up heart. And look, there I am in front of the world with gum in my mouth. The Beatles, also known as the White Album. I am still in a funk from a month of spiced peas, and I am still mourning a man who had secrets. I am not guilty, but I keep that to myself. I am 30 years old, and every year shows what I hid. I am packed with gifts you hung on your walls. Abbey Road. I am walking across the street on an August afternoon. I am thinking about Her Majesty the Queen. I am, even for those who eat me, only half a loaf. I am the last movement of an act of love, but I am still the start and symbol of. Let it be. I am the last, or am I the next to last? I know I am part of a sad, broken, garish thing. I am ambivalent about where I fit here. But I'm glad I mentioned trains. Ponies are hard year. I am, oh, the luck, framed on both sides by deep black. I'm going to conclude with a poem from my most recent book, Tangled Hologram. This is also, all of these books are published by Cahuenga Press, and they're all available on the Cahuenga Press website or on my website, jamescushingpoetry.com. This is a prose poem, and it doesn't comment directly on the current political situation, but perhaps it has an indirect relevance. Dream of Women. In my dream, Memphis Minnie stands near me, her face sore from laughing. Joan Didion, pale in a light green sundress, stands near her, looking anxious, but Minnie stifles a giggle anyway. Now Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, wearing their whatever happened to Baby Jane makeup and costumes, enter through the kitchen door, arguing, as they like to do. And a minute later, Marianne Moore peers in through the same door, her mother standing a few inches behind her. The poet shakes her head and walks away, headed toward, we imagine, the apartment she shares with the elderly lady. Patricia Highsmith comes out from the bathroom, where she's been sewing up a rip in the crotch of her pantsuit, while having a heart-to-heart with Elizabeth Bishop about the ups and downs of living in exile, France, Brazil. Who's that napping on the bed? Louise Brooks, as I live and breathe. She's tired from a long week and had to rest a moment. She came with Betty Paige, who's reading a magazine over in the corner, guarding Louise's sleep, as she likes to say. The phone rings. Billie Holiday, lost, is asking for the address. I give it to her. Carla Bley asks, "Is that Billie? I need to ask her something." And she takes the phone. I notice Virginia Woolf in a corner, listening intently to Rachel Maddow, while Dorothy Parker, seated nearby, looks down at her shoes and smokes. A bell rings several times, and the house lights flash. One of our favorites, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, has just arrived with a limo full of friends. Hillary Clinton, Joan Baez, Angela Davis, Janet Malcolm, Yoko Ono, Grace Kelly, Hedy Lamarr, Mary Shelley, Gertrude Stein, Myra Hess, Frida Kahlo, Nina Simone, Maxine Waters, Martha Argerich, Sally Ride, Margaret Sanger, Meredith Monk, Carole King, Agnes Martin, Chrissy Hind, Joni Mitchell, Ida Lupino, Simone de Beauvoir, Lauren Bacall, Beyonce, Shirley Chisholm, Exene Cervenka, Wanda Coleman, Jane Freilich, and Nico. This party's really rocking now. Good thing I live in a big enough place for all these people to mingle and eat and sway to some good jazz. Now, look out the window. Just outside in the cool air, talking, stand Emma Bovary, Anna Karenina, Odette and Albertine, Daisy Faye, Sabina and Teresa, stuttering Mary Lvov, elegant Mrs. Dalloway, clever Rosalind, scheming Lady Macbeth, sexy Circe, long-suffering Penelope. Sappho takes her Martin acoustic guitar out of its case and starts tuning up. Is it right or wrong to want to live inside this dream as long as I can?
It's right, and you know it's right. you have just, you have such an intimate voice, and you deal in the internal world, the external world. It's intimate, it's public, and it's mysterious, and it's always transformative. You get a image going, and there's transformations, and then there's more transformations, and your poems about your mother and your father, they're just so deeply moving. And it just you're just incredible. You're just you could, the thing I love about poetry is that when there's great poetry, it's mysterious. There's always a mystery, and you can read it over and over again, and you never know quite the source or the meaning, but you feel it and you see glimpses of it, and you just take us in such a deep place, and you have such a large range, Jim. You're really one of a kind. And one of your lines about the Beatles, your love of pop culture, music, movies. One of your Beatles poems, you said, "I'm the only one in my class." You are the only one in your class.
Thank you, Harry. I love you too.
We talked so many times before.
Mm-hmm.
You right now at this minute, who's the greatest poet of them all?
Who's the greatest poet of them all? Oh my Lord! Well, I would have to say it's a toss up between Homer and Shakespeare, but in terms of the ones who have most influenced me and shaped what I'm doing over the years, I have all kinds of early memories of reading Robert Frost and T.S. Eliot. In fact, the first poem I remember writing was a very conscious imitation of T.S. Eliot. I no longer have it, but one of the lines was, I'm being absolutely straight with you in telling you this line. I wrote this when I was like 12 or 13, quote, "Postage stamps curl as if to advertise their intensity." I can't even say it without laughing. So, but that anyway. So from little seeds in the dirt, giant weeds grow. And then one memorable day when I was when I was 12, my English teacher in the 7th grade brought in a record of Dylan Thomas reading A Child's Christmas in Wales. And it was the whole story followed by Fern Hill, and hearing Dylan Thomas's voice and the whole milieu of it just made me want to stay as close to poetry as I could. So from there, and of course Bob Dylan was happening at the same time too, and the similarity of the names and the surreal stuff. So from that I went to E. Cummings, and then Allen Ginsberg, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Hart Crane, Whitman. And then in college, I was lucky enough to work under the great American surrealist George Hitchcock, who also published Kayak magazine. And then in grad school, I had the great fortune of taking a workshop with John Ashbery. And so my thoughts and feelings about poetry were very, shaped by that. And then in 1979, I started meeting the people I mentioned in my bio, including you and Holly. So I would say that all of those people form this one, like the mosaic tiles that form this one beautiful being that is the poetry that sustains me. Also, my daughter Iris is a really good poet. Sorry, I had to say that, but it's true.
The proof is in the pudding. The show you did with her was just fabulous. David, why don't you come on? We just have a couple minutes left, and it'd be nice to, David Romero, if you're still there. Come on.
There he is.
We have
oh yeah. Well, I wanted to give James his time, his glory. Yeah.
We have 2 minutes left, so since Jim is just been on doing his, why don't Jim say a little bit about David, and then David say a little bit about Jim's poetry, and then that would be wonderful. Jim?
Great. Well, thank you for this chance to say this, Harry. Because David, I wanted to ask you your poem about the movies and going into the movies. Do you remember any of the names of the movies you saw?
Oh, well, there was Braveheart and First Contact, and
okay. No, I mean, I'm genuinely interested because which movie it is tells you a lot about the time and the overall
right. Yeah, Jurassic Park 2. That was one of the great ones. I think that was the first time I saw a boob, in real life. So very excited.
All right.
David.
Yes. So I really wanted to give praise for the Beatles. I mean, that was just an absolute delight. And it was interesting, like Harry said, that your set, it started off so mysterious and so deliberate, and then the transition into full-on humor by the end with the entourage and the limo. I mean, I definitely had to. I was cracking up. I was laughing so hard because it was so funny. It's such a building a story out of the names listed and the order and the juxtaposition and context, and I really, really loved it. And and then I remember one of the lines that hit me so hard was the 10-cent huddle. Oh boy. In that one, that just like a ton of bricks. It just was.
Thank you.
So
thank
powerful.
you, my friend.
Well, you two have just been great poets, and you each have your own journey, and you're both fabulous, and it's really been an exhilarating hour for me. I like to keep learning, and you guys are singular in the work that you do, so you've really enhanced my learning, my experience, and so I'm thankful to you for that. And I have an announcement to make. Next Tuesday, we have two wonderful poets with us, Todd Colby and Joanna Penn Cooper. And so that's our show coming up. And this is the end of the show right here. We have another program coming up next on Channel 1390. So thank you once again, David A. Romero and James Cushing.